Next question, please.
Jesus.
Good evening.
Get an answer, just get
Thank you for
gaslit.
allowing us some time to talk to you face to face. My single burning question about Premier Kenney is about his moral compass and what's happened to it. I'm pretty disappointed in my Premier. I stood with Jason Kenney when he was the Minister of Multiculturalism on Parliament Hill for the pledge of never again. No more genocide, no more religious persecution, and I watched this provincial government condone the arresting of pastors because they didn't follow the AHS guidelines.
I'll let...
I'm not done. I have one more little...
Okay, perfect, thank you.
As part of my question about his moral compass and what's happened to the moral fabric of this province, the way it's been pulled apart by medical lies, by the fact that alternative medications weren't allowed, doctors have not been allowed to talk to their patients properly. There's a whole moral compass issue going on in the Kenney government that makes me want to vomit. And I'd like to know what's going to happen if he stays as this province's premier. Because I don't believe in this man anymore.
Thank you for your question. Travis.
Well, thank you for sharing your viewpoint, and maybe I'll start at the back end on the AHS piece.
Shit. Hey.
We've got a massive medical system. It's been incredibly difficult in that system, and there are real weaknesses. I mean, there's a couple of physicians in here that I consult with, amongst others, regularly, to get a bird's eye view on what they're seeing on the ground, so I can test that against what I'm hearing from AHS. And yeah, there's problems in our healthcare system. I totally agree with that assessment. Absolutely agree with it. And we will be and are working through that, believe me. I wish it, to me, I'm fresh, I'm a new politician, I'm new to government. I would like to be able to go in there and say, just make me health minister for a week and I'll clean this all up. It is more complicated than that. That's my first reaction. That's my first predisposition. But what I can commit to you, sincerely, is we are really pushing for reforms there at that level. Really pushing for reforms at that level. Just so you know that to be the case. Now, you talked about alternative therapies and all of that. Here's our challenge around the PIT committee. I'm not a medical doctor, I'm not a virologist. I have no background on those issues in that discipline. None of us do in terms of politicians, and yet the decision making squarely fell on our shoulders. And we take responsibility for that, where we made good decisions and where we made less than ideal decisions. But when it came to alternative therapies, you don't want politicians making those decisions. I can tell you that. We have bodies in this province, in this country, for whom it's their only responsibility, and that is to
Make money.
test products and therapies and vaccines. And we have a college of physicians and surgeons as well. And so we have to defer to those competent health authorities that are ultimately assigned to the task. And when you express frustration with the College of Physicians, I get it. I get it, because I'm going to give you an example. I've got a friend who has Lyme's disease. He went to his doctor for 3 years, and they said, the competent vector cannot live in this province, therefore you cannot have Lyme's disease, therefore I cannot treat you. He went to the US and he got therapy. Unfortunately, it wasn't quick enough, and he's going to have lifelong effects. And it was maybe a year later, in overwhelming evidence that we had Lyme's disease in this province, the College of Physicians and Surgeons came around and acknowledged it. So I know that there's error in their process. I know that the risk aversion levels to new techniques and therapies is high. I know all of that. But you don't want politicians adjudicating this stuff, or we will be nowhere. We will be in error. We have to defer to the competent health authorities that are in place to make those decisions, and that's what we did. Now, we would get advice from our Chief Medical Officer of Health, from the Health Minister. We would debate the recommendations. I can tell you that very often what the final decisions did not reflect, the original advice we received. I can tell you that for a fact. Although we continued to work with our Chief Medical Officer of Health through that whole process, we knew that we could not and should not get too far offside of where she believed we should be landing. But we did make the final decisions, and very often they were quite divergent from the original recommendations we would receive.
Can we talk about moral compass of our premier, please? Because that was the focus of my question.
Well, I find it difficult to evaluate an individual's moral compass arbitrarily when he's not here. What I can say, sitting around the cabinet table with him, he had the best interests of Albertans in mind on every decision. As we wrestled with a whole series of bad options to choose from, he was leading us in decisions in the best interest of Albertans, and we did it imperfectly. We made wrong decisions. I will admit that. He will certainly admit that. We've navigated it imperfectly. But I can tell you this, that he has not lost his moral compass. We were grieved. I was grieved when I observed AHS, I think, prematurely and unnecessarily moving in on churches. I was outraged personally in those initial cases. That changed. And it had to change, that approach. But I can tell you this, the Premier has not lost his moral compass.
Thanks, Travis.